I'm John, a single dad living in the most uptight, HOA-controlled neighborhood in the history of suburban America. Picture this: manicured lawns so perfect they look like they've been vacuumed, houses painted in shades of beige and slightly darker beige, and a community so obsessed with rules that they probably have a guideline on how many times you're allowed to sneeze per day. Enter my son, Ethan. He's 12, a total tech wizard, and a metalhead in training. Oh, and he's also in a wheelchair. But not just any wheelchair, no sir. Ethan's wheelchair is a custom-built masterpiece he named Rolling Dragon. Imagine a neon green beast with LED lights that could double as a rave prop, Bluetooth speakers blasting Metallica, and a giant dragon decal on the back that looks like it's about to breathe fire. It's basically the Batmobile of wheelchairs, and Ethan loves it more than life itself. Now, you'd think people would admire his creativity, right? Wrong. This is where Karen comes in. Karen is the self-appointed queen of the HOA, a woman who probably ironed her yoga pants before her morning power walk. She's the kind of person who looks at a rainbow and says, "Can we tone it down a bit? It's clashing with my aura." One sunny afternoon, Karen marched up to our doorstep like she was auditioning for a role in Mean Girls, the HOA edition. She handed me a letter with so much disdain you'd think it was written in radioactive ink. The letter stated, and I quote, "The Rolling Dragon wheelchair violates HOA aesthetic guidelines, section 13.7, prohibition of visually disruptive items. Please remove or modify the wheelchair to comply with the neighborhood's color palette, beige, taupe, or eggshell, or face a $500 fine." I blinked at her. "You're kidding, right?" Karen crossed her arms, her face a perfect mask of smugness. "I'm afraid not, John. That wheelchair is an eyesore. It's disrupting the harmony of our community." Just yesterday, Mrs. Henderson's poodle had a nervous breakdown because the neon green clashed with her hydrangeas. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. Ethan, who had been quietly listening, piped up, "But it's my wheelchair. It's how I get around." Karen smiled, a smile so fake it could have been sponsored by Botox. "I understand, sweetie, but rules are rules. Maybe you could get a nice, neutral-colored one? Beige is very calming." Calming? Calming? I wanted to scream. Instead, I said, "Karen, this wheelchair is Ethan's freedom. It's his personality. It's his art." She shrugged. "Art belongs in museums, not on our sidewalks. And those LED lights, they're a safety hazard. What if someone mistakes them for a UFO and calls the police?" At this point, I was half convinced Karen was a robot programmed to suck the joy out of life. But before I could respond, she dropped the bomb. "If you don't comply within 48 hours, we'll have no choice but to take further action." I slammed the door in her face. Not my finest moment, but hey, when you're dealing with someone who probably dreams in HOA bylaws, subtlety goes out the window. Over the next few days, things escalated. Karen started sending daily emails with increasingly ridiculous complaints. One claimed the dragon decal was intimidating the mailman. Another said the wheelchair's Bluetooth speakers were causing birds to sing off-key. Yes, apparently our neighborhood birds are trained opera singers. Ethan, bless his heart, tried to compromise. He turned off the LEDs and even played classical music instead of Metallica. But Karen wasn't satisfied. She wanted the Rolling Dragon gone. Then came the final straw. One morning, I woke up to the smell of smoke. I rushed outside to find Ethan's beloved wheelchair in flames, with Karen standing a few feet away, holding an empty gas can and a look of pure satisfaction on her face. "What the hell, Karen?" I shouted. She didn't even flinch. I did what had to be done. That monstrosity was a blight on our community. Ethan, who had wheeled himself outside, stared at the smoldering remains of his wheelchair. Tears streamed down his face. "It was my legs, my freedom." Karen shrugged. "Freedom comes with rules, sweetie. Maybe next time, you'll think twice before defacing our neighborhood with your creativity." As she walked away, I felt a fire ignite in my chest. A fire hotter than the one that had just consumed Ethan's wheelchair. Karen had crossed a line, and she was about to learn a very important lesson. Never mess with a tech-savvy dad and his metalhead son. The rolling dragon was gone, but the battle was just beginning. And trust me, Karen was about to wish she'd never heard the words HOA aesthetic guidelines. Our revenge plan began with a brainstorming session over a bowl of neon green jello, Ethan's idea. He said it matched the rolling dragon's aesthetic. We called it Operation Karen's Karma. Step 1. Psychological warfare. I hacked into the HOA's email list. Don't ask how. Let's just say Karen's password was HOA Queen 123 and sent out a fake announcement from Karen herself. The subject line? Mandatory Neighborhood Aesthetic Overhaul. The email read, Dear neighbors, in an effort to maintain our community's unparalleled beauty, I am implementing a new rule. All homes must be repainted in neon colors by the end of the month. Suggested shades include electric lime, laser lemon, and disco inferno pink. Failure to comply will result in a $1,000 fine and/or a mandatory interpretive dance performance at the next HOA meeting. Sincerely, Karen, your fearless leader, The responses were immediate. Mrs. Henderson from across the street called Karen, screaming about how her house was a historical beige landmark. Old Mr. Jenkins threatened to sue if he had to paint his house disco inferno pink. Karen spent the entire day fielding angry calls, her voice growing increasingly shrill. Ethan and I watched from our living room window, high-fiving every time she stomped her foot in frustration. Step 2. The glitter bomb. This was Ethan's idea, and it was pure evil genius. We ordered a giant box of glitter, the kind that sticks to everything and never, ever goes away. Then we packaged it in a fancy gift box labeled HOA approved. Complimentary home decor upgrade. I rigged the box with a small motor and a pressure sensor. When opened, it would explode glitter everywhere like a piñata filled with chaos. Ethan added a nice touch by including a note that read, Congratulations! You've won the HOA's Most Aesthetically Pleasing Home Award. Please display this glitter proudly as a symbol of your commitment to our community. We delivered the box to Karen's doorstep using a drone, which Ethan had named Karma. The drone hovered just long enough to capture Karen's reaction on camera. She opened the box with the enthusiasm of someone who just won the lottery. The glitter erupted like a volcano, coating her porch, and her prized rose bushes in a thick layer of neon pink sparkles. Her scream could probably be heard in the next zip code. Step 3. The fake HOA meeting. This was my piece de resistance. Using a deepfake app, I created a video of Karen announcing an emergency HOA meeting. In the video, Karen declared that all residents must install giant inflatable dragons on their lawns to promote creativity and individuality. I uploaded the video to the neighborhood Facebook group with the caption, Big changes are coming. Let's embrace our inner dragons. The comments section exploded. Half the neighbors were outraged, while the other half, mostly the kids, were thrilled. One guy even ordered a 20-foot dragon inflatable and set it up in his yard before Karen could debunk the video. By this point, Karen was unraveling faster than a cheap sweater. She spent hours trying to convince everyone the video was fake, but no one believed her. After all, who would fake an announcement about inflatable dragons? Step 4. The final touch. Ethan and I decided to give Karen a taste of her own medicine. We printed out a fake HOA violation notice and taped it to her front door. It read, Dear Karen, your home has been found in violation of HOA guidelines. Section 13.7, Prohibition of visually disruptive items. The neon pink glitter on your porch is deemed excessively fabulous and must be removed immediately. Failure to comply will result in a $500 fine and/or a public apology to the rolling dragon. Sincerely, the HOA Aesthetics Committee *. Karen's reaction was everything we hoped for. She stormed over to our house, glitter still clinging to her hair like she'd been attacked by a flock of sparkly pigeons. This is harassment, she screeched. I smiled sweetly. No, Karen, this is karma. And trust me, we're just getting started. As she stomped away, Ethan and I high-fived again. The rolling dragon might be gone, but its spirit lived on in our revenge plot. And Karen? She was about to learn that messing with a tech-savvy dad and his metalhead son was the biggest mistake of her life. Karen thought she had won. She thought burning Ethan's wheelchair would be the end of it. Oh, how wrong she was. If anything, she had only fueled our determination. Ethan and I were about to unleash the next phase of Operation Karen's Karma, and it was going to be glorious. First, we needed a new wheelchair. But not just any wheelchair, this one had to be bigger, bolder, and more outrageous than the original Rolling Dragon. It had to be a statement, a middle finger to Karen's beige tyranny. And so, Rolling Dragon 2.0 was born. Ethan and I spent weeks working on the design. We sourced parts from junkyards, ordered custom decals online, and even enlisted the help of a local robotics club. Shout out to the nerds at Tech Titans HQ. The result? A wheelchair that looked like it had been designed by a mad scientist with a vendetta against HOA rules. Rolling Dragon 2.0 featured flamethrowers, a built-in sound system that could blast everything from Metallica to Baby Shark, a drone attachment for aerial surveillance, a glitter cannon, and, of course, a giant dragon head on the front that actually breathed smoke. When we unveiled it to Ethan, his eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning. "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. "Cooler than the original?" I asked. He grinned. "Way cooler. Karen's gonna lose her mind." And lose her mind she did. The first test run of Rolling Dragon 2.0 was a thing of beauty. Ethan rolled down the sidewalk, the LED flames flickering, the sound system blasting Enter Sandman, and the dragon head puffing out little clouds of smoke. It was like a heavy metal parade on wheels. Karen was outside pruning her roses, which were still faintly pink from the glitter bomb, when she saw it. Her jaw dropped so fast I thought it might hit the ground. "What is that?" she sputtered, pointing at the wheelchair like it was a UFO. "This," Ethan said with a smirk, "is Rolling Dragon 2.0. HOA approved, of course." Karen's face turned the same shade as her ruined roses. "This is an outrage. It's a monstrosity." I stepped in, holding up a fake document I'd printed earlier. "Actually, Karen, we checked the HOA bylaws, and there's no rule against wheelchairs with flamethrowers and smoke-breathing dragon heads. So, technically, we're in compliance." She snatched the document from my hand, her eyes scanning it furiously. "This is ridiculous. I'll call a meeting. I'll change the rules. But before she could finish, Ethan hit a button on his wheelchair, and the glitter cannon fired. A cloud of neon pink glitter engulfed Karen, leaving her looking like a disco ball that had been hit by a tornado. "Oops," Ethan said, not sounding sorry at all. "My bad." The next few days were a blur of chaos and hilarity. Karen called an emergency HOA meeting to discuss the wheelchair situation, but no one showed up. Turns out, the neighbors were too busy dealing with their own problems, like the inflatable dragons still sitting in their yards thanks to my deepfake video. Meanwhile, Rolling Dragon 2.0 became a neighborhood sensation. Kids lined up to take selfies with it, and even some of the adults admitted it was kind of cool. Except for Karen, of course. She referred to it as the Devil's Chariot. But Karen wasn't done yet. She tried to fight back by filing a formal complaint with the city, claiming the wheelchair was a public safety hazard. The city inspector showed up, took one look at Rolling Dragon 2.0 and said, "This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Can I get a ride?" Karen's face turned purple. "You're supposed to shut it down." The inspector shrugged. "Ma'am, there's no law against awesome." By this point, Karen was desperate. She started spreading rumors that the wheelchair was haunted and cursed. She even tried to bribe Ethan with a brand new, beige wheelchair, which he immediately turned into a planter for his succulents. But the final blow came when Ethan and I decided to take Rolling Dragon 2.0 to the next level. We entered it in the local 4th of July parade, and it was a hit. The crowd went wild as Ethan rolled by, the dragon head puffing smoke, the sound system blasting, "We will rock you," and the glitter cannon firing bursts of red, white, and blue glitter. Karen, who was watching from the sidelines, looked like she was about to spontaneously combust. "This is an outrage," she shouted, but no one listened. They were too busy cheering for Ethan and his epic wheelchair. As the parade ended, Ethan turned to me and said, "Dad, this is the best day of my life." I ruffled his hair. "Mine too, kiddo. Mine too." By this point, Karen was a walking, well, more like stomping disaster. Her hair still had streaks of neon glitter, her roses were permanently pink, and her reputation as the HOA queen was in shambles. But Karen wasn't one to go down without a fight. Oh no, she had one last trick up her sleeve. A desperate, poorly thought-out trick that would ultimately seal her fate. It all went down at the next HOA meeting. Karen had called it under the guise of discussing community improvements, but we all knew it was really about Rolling Dragon 2.0. Ethan and I showed up early, with the wheelchair in all its glory. The dragon head was freshly polished, the glitter cannon was fully loaded, and the sound system was queued up with a playlist titled Karen's Greatest Hits. The meeting started with Karen standing at the front of the room, her face pinched like she'd just eaten a lemon. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Today, we need to address a serious issue that's been plaguing our community." She paused for dramatic effect, then pointed at Ethan's wheelchair. "That thing is a menace. It's loud, it's disruptive, and it's an eyesore. I move that we ban it immediately." The room fell silent. Then, to my surprise, Mrs. Henderson, the same woman who'd once complained about Ethan's wheelchair clashing with her hydrangeas, stood up. "Actually, Karen, I think it's kind of fun. My grandkids love it." "Fun?" Karen screeched. "It's a safety hazard. It's a fire-breathing monster." Ethan raised his hand. "Actually, it's just a fog machine. And the glitter cannon is biodegradable." Karen glared at him. "This isn't a joke, young man. This is about preserving the integrity of our neighborhood." I stood up, holding up a stack of papers. "Actually, Karen, I did some research. According to the HOA bylaws, there's no rule against wheelchairs with decorative dragon heads or glitter cannons. So, technically, Ethan's wheelchair is perfectly legal." Karen's face turned red. "Then we'll change the bylaws." "Actually," I said, grinning, "you can't. Because as of this morning, you're no longer the HOA president." The room erupted in gasps. Karen looked like she'd been hit by a truck. "What are you talking about?" I handed her the stack of papers. "I started a petition to remove you from your position. Turns out a lot of people are tired of your, let's call it, enthusiastic enforcement of the rules." Karen scanned the petition, her hands trembling. This is ridiculous. You can't do this." "Actually," Mrs. Henderson said, "we can, and we did. You've been voted out, Karen." Karen looked around the room, hoping for support, but all she got were awkward smiles and a few thumbs-ups. Even Mr. Jenkins, who'd once threatened to sue over the inflatable dragons, gave her a sympathetic shrug. "This is an outrage," Karen shouted, slamming the petition on the table. "I'll fight this. But before she could finish, Ethan hit a button on his wheelchair, and the sound system blared, "Another one bites the dust." The room burst into laughter, and Karen stormed out, her heels clicking furiously on the floor. The rest of the meeting was surprisingly productive. We voted to update the HOA bylaws to be more inclusive and less Karen-ish, and, in a twist no one saw coming, I was elected as the new HOA president. I ran on a platform of less beige, more fun, and apparently it resonated. As for Karen, she moved out of the neighborhood a week later. Rumor has it she joined a minimalist commune where everything is white, silent, and utterly devoid of glitter. Ethan and I, meanwhile, became local legends. Rolling Dragon 2.0 was featured in the town newspaper, and Ethan even got invited to speak at a robotics conference. His presentation was titled, "How to Build a Wheelchair That Terrifies HOA Presidents." But the best part? The neighborhood changed for the better. People started painting their houses bright colors, planting wildflowers, and even hosting block parties with actual music. It was like Karen's departure had lifted a beige-colored veil from our eyes. One sunny afternoon, as Ethan and I were tinkering with Rolling Dragon 3.0, yes, we're already working on an upgrade, he turned to me and said, "Dad, do you think Karen will ever come back?" I ruffled his hair. I don't know, kiddo, but if she does, we'll be ready. Ethan grinned. Good, because I've got some new ideas for the glitter cannon. And with that, we got back to work, knowing that no matter what life threw at us, we'd always have each other, and a wheelchair that could outshine even the darkest HOA rulebook.